welcome to the first show of Referee Corner here on Island Stats for the year 2021. Joining me is one of the referee instructors, Mr. Anthony Francis, and we expect to be joined by others momentarily. But Mr. Francis, we all know that this COVID pandemic has challenged many over the year. And I want to say good evening to Mr. Martin Wire.
Good evening, gents. Sorry, I was at youth football training and got absolutely soaked, so I've literally just got in and dried off.
Okay, and also good evening to Mr. Lyndon Rayner.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah, okay. Oh boy.
Well, I'm joined by these three distinguished gentlemen who are with the responsible for not only educating but making sure that the current crop of referees are up to date with what needs to be going on. And Francis, I'm going to start with you because as I was saying, we've struggled with this pandemic,
Yes.
but through it all, the referees have continued their training, their learning, how difficult is it to motivate, or how easy is it to motivate this particular group, knowing that they're willing to come out and do everything that's required to make sure that they are ready to go whenever the association can kick back in.
Earl, I can tell you that for several of them, the motivation is very, very easy. They will show up at any time, and they will do whatever is asked of them. We have not known, we have no idea of when we're going to restart, but our goal was to ensure that we didn't need a long time to ramp back up to game mode. So because we know that when we do get the go ahead, that the games are going to come hard and fast, and we want to be prepared to do whatever it is that is necessary to facilitate the game that we love. So our referees, many of them have continued with all of our training. Whenever we call them, they arrive and they are there. Whenever we do a technical session, they are there. So for us, we're just continuing on in the way we want to maintain so that we are ready for whenever we are allowed to hit the field again. And we will be at our highest standard as we seek to become as excellent as we can.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Wire. Just hearing Mr. Francis talk, what has been the biggest eyebrows-ing raised thing that you've seen since you've been here with the officiating?
Good evening, Earl. So what, since I came to Bermuda 10 years ago, whatever it was, well, first of all, it was the fact that everybody knew everybody, which shouldn't surprise me moving to a small island and married to a Bermudian. But, I found it quite amazing that the first couple of games that I did stick in my mind as a referee, because you turn up and everyone just knows everyone by their first name. Everyone's getting on. They're all cousins or whatever. And then as soon as they crossed the white line, it was war. And as soon as the final whistle went, everyone was friends again. It was getting used to that sort of, and I came in obviously as the outsider, the Englishman in the mix, because of course refereeing in England, you know the players, some of the names, but they're not all living together. That was the first thing that struck me. But actually, to be fair, and I think I've mentioned this to you in the past, mate, that what struck me, what continues to strike me, I don't wish to be patronising, is the standard of football. You come to a small island, you think, what's it going to be like? It's going to be parochial, like Sunday morning football, like we have in England, which is the pub football. But actually, the standard and level here is very, very high and continues to be so. It's very fast. It's technically skillful. Keeps an old man like me on my toes when I'm trying to run around a football pitch. Trying to get out the centre circle, as Lyndon and Anthony will probably say to me. That is the thing, the standard of football here. And of course, that's borne out by how many Bermudians go back to England overseas and have, successful careers with football teams overseas. So that was the big thing for me. Just the skill levels that continues out. I've got to say, since I started, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And even in my old age, I still enjoy it. I miss it because of the COVID. And you mentioned that. I'm really missing it. I never thought I would. as much, but I'm actually really missing getting out and getting people having a go at me on a Sunday afternoon. I'm loving it. I've just got to stay at home and have the wife having a go at me now, but don't tell her that.
You and Mr. Francis.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Rayner, good evening. Back when you would have gotten started officiating after your career of playing, how much of what is in place now was in place back then? Like having an instructor, having a fitness instructor, having a technical instructor, having all of these components to actually help to keep the game fresh in officials' minds.
Oh, well, you're only talking about 3 years ago since no, in fact, refereeing is now seen as a very important component of this whole game. And in fact, as we all know, you can't have a game without the referee. So FIFA recognizing the role that the critical role that the referee plays has revolutionized the whole training process. When I first started, we had an instructor come in, gave us a law, and that's about it. Now you have, in some countries where there's referee managers for every match. The training has become more technical. We've almost overloaded with the laws now. There's a video, as Anthony and Martin can attest. There's almost a video for every law that's in the book, going from the field of play all the way up to law 12, law 17, and whatnot. So the opportunities are there for people who want to take out refereeing to get a proper knowledge of the game, but it's up to them. They got to be committed.
Yeah, when we look at what's on offer for these officials nowadays, Martin, from your background, how much has it changed since you started out way back when?
Well, I first qualified and sat my test as a referee when I was 14, which is 37 plus change years ago. I still played a lot until my early 20s as well. It's changed phenomenally even in the last few years, with the emphasis being much more on fitness and match awareness. Back in the day, and Lyndon said it when he talked about instructors that used to come over to Bermuda, it was the law. The exam was learn laws 1 to 17 by rote, and sit an exam like you were at school, get 80%. That's it, you can go and referee. And you were literally thrown out there to go and referee a bunch of thugs around a football pitch on a Sunday morning. In the last few years, there's been better emphasis on, as across the sport with players and everything else, diet, fitness. Anthony and Garrick do a great job getting all that stuff across to the referee. So it's changed phenomenally. You've just got to be so much fitter and be more aware of the game and what's going on around it. The law is almost, knowing the law is massively important, but that's now become almost, it's expected. If you're going to referee or be an assistant referee, you're expected to know the law. So don't worry about that. If you don't know it, you shouldn't be doing it. It's now the bit about the fitness and positioning around the pitch and game awareness that's come on in leaps and bounds, much more professional than it's ever been.
Right. Now, I'm going to ask, and any one of you can answer this, because when you start talking about the fitness level, when you're doing the fitness training, and having to know the laws of the game, are you working with them while doing fitness training to cite laws so that they always say when you're tired, you tend not to think straight. But if you're working at it and constantly doing it, you tend to remember what needs to happen. So are you doing the laws mixed in with the fitness, or are we just working with just fitness at the time and then work on the laws? You're gonna have to turn your mic up just a little bit.
Anthony's the IT guy, so you see how far we get with IT and refereeing.
You love throwing stones.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, see.
Franz, you must have turned it down, not up.
I'll help him out while he's working out his technical difficulties. Anthony and Garrick, Anthony's the fitness expert. You can tell by my physique, I'm probably not. But when we do have the sessions, we've been able to have at the National Stadium, when the technical guys are there, Lyndon and I will make a point of, while they're doing their intervals with Anthony, I'll get we have the laws on our phone these days. Anyone can download the IFAB app, and I'm quizzing them on the laws while they're, as you say, tired, because it helps with concentration. And so very integrated.
Yeah, I just want to say there's a component in referee training where it's integrated training, where we take the fitness component and the technical component and put them together. The thing that, and this is probably the one negative part that we have in Bermuda, is that because the numbers of referees are small in comparison to other countries, we end up sometimes using them as part of the exercise, which is not always the best option. But we make it work. But yeah, Anthony does a lot with the fitness, and me and Martin will just throw in some integrated examples where Anthony will come up with some idea and we just work with it and try to simulate what's that whole exercise as being in a match.
As you guys go along about your regular duty, we have Anthony, Mr. Francis, who still officiates, Mr. Wire, who officiates, Mr. Rayner, who, let's leave that right there. But when you're assessing, how important is it that you kind of, while taking your notes, you think about how you're going to present it, because you might be dealing with someone who doesn't take criticism well, and that's a human thing. That's not just a poking at anyone. That's a human thing, because how you deliver that message to me may not be how you deliver the message to someone else. So how much do you have to think about how I'm going to deliver this message to the person that's been in charge of a game or had something to do with the game?
That's a very good question, because everyone has a different personality. As instructors, we have different personalities in how we deliver the message. But that being said, it's actually in the form itself. It actually asks us, how did the referee accept the information given to him? So even that is graded on the reception of the message being relayed to them. Unfortunately, because of work, the type of work I do, I've not been able to attend football matches at the moment. So
none of us have.
Okay, you got me back. But Martin and Anthony, we see a lot of them, and the difficulty for them is that they're actually refereeing the game. So it's very difficult to cast an objective eye over your fellow officials when you're actually in the game itself. And then, we don't have a vibrant assessor program for various reasons, which the chair is trying his best to get up and running. And then there's other things that we lack in Bermuda because of the level of football we play. The lack of games being filmed. You have your camera, which is sometimes we've been able to use, but we have other cameras. But as you know, from a football point of view, a one-dimensional view of an incident is not ideal, and it's very hard sometimes, in the absence of video evidence, to actually tell a referee you got it wrong or you got it right.
Mr. Francis, has your audio been corrected? Okay, let me suggest go out of the program and then come back in and let's see if it fixes it.
I thought that was a simple IT thing.
I've never known Anthony so quiet. It's great.
I've silenced him. But throughout the course of the years going back, Lyndon, Mr. Rayner, we've always struggled with the lack of video evidence. It's always been how even your job used to do it. It was witnesses and and things were dealt with in that regard. But since that has been changed, are we trying to rely a little bit more on the technology, how it's improved to kind of validate what the issues are?
Yeah, because if I tell you as an assessor, if I say, what do you think about that foul in the 25th minute of play, and me sitting up on the sidelines, I'm going to see it one way. Martin, the referee, will see it another way, and the issue may come where there's a very wide difference of opinion of what actually took place. We don't have the ability to go to the tape and say, "Hey, this is what it would happen." And as I've always said, it's being in the field itself. Earl, you play football as well. You see things differently than someone sitting on the sideline. And so for me, I haven't been a referee in the middle. I'm very cautious of when I'm going back to a referee to talk about something. I have to give them the benefit of the doubt of this is what they saw at the time. I think Martin and Francis would agree that by far most of our referees are there. The problem that we're getting problems with is maybe some more technical things about the movement in and around the field. And with not having the ability to have that videotape evidence, can hamper things at times, but we do make it work. I mean, I have to give credit to Martin in particular because I don't get out to as much games as I should be because of work. But Martin's always talked about how he went to a match and saw the younger referees performing and is able to impart his advice, as well as Anthony.
How's the audio now, Mr. Francis?
I don't know. Am I back yet?
No, you're back. You're back.
I'm back.
Sorry, Mr. Wire. But I'll get back to you, Mr. Francis. Mr. Wire, when we look at assignments of officials and depending on the games of such, because there's no secret. There are some games that are high tempo. There are some games that you have to be kind of weary about because of the two teams and if they're both strong or if they're both weak and all those type of things. But when sorting out a team for a day, and I'm talking about the officiating team, what are some of the things you like to make sure that the team you're working with on the day are aware about when it comes to a high level? When I say high level, I'm talking about a fast tempo expected game. What do you want them to know to help you to make the game flow a little easier?
Again, I think that's a good question. And again, the three of us and the other senior officials all have a different approach to it. But we do actually, in our technical sessions, we cover a lot of time on pre-match briefs, which is hugely important, and it's something that is key to the officiating team performing well on the day. Get there nice and early. Me personally, when I'm doing the first thing I do is do a pitch inspection, greet my fellow officials and pitch inspection. Then we start talking there and then. So today we've got Team A versus Team B. This is a top of the table clash. This is a bottom of the table clash. You take each game on its individual merits, whilst recognizing the tempo and technique that the teams have, because a lot of the teams are, as you know, are very well coached, and they're coached to a certain way. Do they like to play out from the back? Do they hit on the break? Are they a physical team? Are they fast? And whilst you can't go into a game when you blow the whistle to start the game with that mindset, totally, you have to be flexible, but it's good to have an understanding. So if I'm working with, it's easier when you're working with senior assistant referees who have been around, and it's important when you're working with the newer ones, the less experienced, that you have this discussion with them about what we may expect. It's key to understanding. And when we do the lessons, the video lessons that Lyndon referred to, one of the considerations we always look at officials is understanding of the game, football understanding. And we do that with officials by saying to them, you have to understand the game. You have to understand how a team plays. So if a team nowadays, with the change in the goal kick law, for example, you see it on the telly, but they're still doing it at local level. Teams can play out from the back. Therefore, as a referee have to be further up the pitch, or can you hang back so you're near in case there's a penalty area incident? You have to understand how the teams play. So the pre-match brief with your officials is vital for that, you know. So we bang on to our officials about getting there at least an hour before kickoff. And with the COVID, it's been an hour and a half, which has been ideal. And when I'm assessing, and you talked about assessing with Linda, I get there nice and early so I can hear a pre-match brief. So I know what the officials have been asked to do and how they can operate as a team.
Mm-hmm. What about your approach, Mr. Francis, in game day, especially? We now have an abundance of young female referees or referee assistants that are kind of catching up to speed. But when you're given that briefing to the newer lot of officials, how do you manage that if it's a top of the table class?
I've had the privilege of serving with Lyndon and Tony and all of those guys. So I learned my pre-match methodology from them, and we literally cover everything. I do exactly like Martin does. I do exactly like Lyndon does. We have these rituals that we go through for match day. We know when we get there what we have to do. When we're talking about, if I have, and I like having them, actually, I know Martin does too. We like having our junior officials with us on relatively important games because we get to see how they'll react in that sort of scenario. But we do go through an extensive match brief. I have a list of probably about 20 things that I cover with brand new officials right before the game. We talk about the teams that are playing. We talk about the individuals that are playing. The benefit that we have, as Martin talks about, is we've seen these players a lot. We know how they're going to behave. We know what it's going to be. But we also have the benefit of having people like Lyndon who have been doing this for longer than we have, but providing us with other intel, with other intel. We're also very aware of what's going on in society. We understand about how games are going to shape up. We understand what rivalries are about. We understand when competitions puts together Derby Day. We understand those things. We understand how the games are going to be, and our officials are getting better at it. Our officials are understanding that when we tell them, you kind of have to know how Southampton Rangers are going to play against Eagles, or how they're going to play against Dandytown. We know how PAC are going to play. We know how Village are going to play, but we have to understand all of those components, and we're doing that better and better. Are we where we want to be yet? No, because we're still striving for excellence, but we are getting a whole lot better than we used to be.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Rena, you talk about how you can't get to games because of your job. So how are you working with Mr. Wire on the technical side when it comes to training? Are you sitting down and asking them, or do you guys go over or allow the officials to talk about their game day weekend and then try to help them through a process?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of video conference sessions at the moment. And then also at the beginning, sometimes when there's a lull in Anthony's fitness program, we kind of talk about, I'll ask a question, or Martin will ask a question. What happened in your game? Is there something significant that happened in your game? Because, like I said earlier, we don't have the ability to go back and view match after match to look at those incidents that may have sparked, a heated reaction, or is the talk in the community. And so we asked them, what happened in your match? And someone will come up and say, this happened, and we get them to walk the incident through to us. And that way we're able to say, well, you know what? No, you got it right, or you didn't get it 100% right, but you could have done it this way better. But like I said, in as much as we are progressing with the technology for teaching, our biggest downfall is that we cannot see a lot of the actual game time and game incidents because we don't have that sort of facility here in Bermuda.
Right. And so when we talk about controlling a game right from the start, a lot of people talk about how referees manage the game, not just locally but globally. How some people kind of are in charge right from the start. Game management for you looks like what?
Game management for me is it really is understanding the tempo of the game and what it's all about. Easing yourself into it. You should never referee a game because it's a power trip. That's not what it's all about. You know as well as I do that the best referees are the ones who are, you don't use the whistle. When it is used, it's used to good effect. You sort of ease yourself into the game. You see how the teams want to play because everyone's gone there to watch the two teams play. They haven't come there to watch me run around like an idiot blowing a whistle. They've come there to watch football. So you control a game with your personality, with your presence, and everyone has a different way. I'm an old. It's a real cliche, but again, personality is a key part of it. You can know the laws off pat. Anyone can know the laws, but how are you as a person? It's all about man management and leadership on a football pitch. They're great skills that come across all life, And if you can diffuse the situation with your presence, or with a smile, or with a sense of humour, if that's appropriate, or just by talking to the players like human beings. And being respectful, it'll go a whole way. So it's from the first whistle, what's this like? In the first 30 seconds, if somebody puts in a crunch and tackle because they want to be the hard man of the game and they want to disrupt their opponents, well, if that needs a yellow card, that needs a yellow card. And you've stamped your control in the game in the first 30 seconds by saying, I'm not having this today. But if the players are wanting to play football and they're not moaning and they're getting straight up after a challenge, then let them play football, So it's gauging that tempo, stepping in where you need to be. And a lot of that comes with experience. But we, like Anthony said, I love working with our younger and less experienced officials and easing them into it. I think we've got a lot of talent on the island at the minute, officiating-wise, which we should be working towards to nurture. So old people like me can follow Lyndon and retire into the sunset.
I find when I was refereeing, Bill knows what Martin said, and Anthony, with the youngsters, I think sometimes you end up concentrating a bit more as a referee because you have to attack them early. So you are more in tune with managing that game properly, or managing that game at a higher level than what you would have normally done if it was Martin in the middle and had me and Anthony on the sidelines, because you tend to relax. Lyndon and Anthony know how to take care of themselves. But when you got a youngster, you tend to be a bit more switched on, because the last thing you want to do is lose them during the match.
Do you, Mr. Francis, do you give the young people the opportunity to kind of make a call? Especially, we all know whenever the referee blows the whistle, it's always their fault, no matter what, if it's the first minute in the yellow card or the 90th minute in the penalty. But how comfortable do you make the assistant referees in making that call when it's needed? Because you might not be in a position to make it. And how comfortable are they? They're already looked at, they're watching, they're seeing 92 minutes going, and there's a foul committed in the box, and they have to feel like they have that support. So what are you telling them to ensure them that if I put up my flag, I'm going to get the support of the official in the middle? That'll be you.
Oh, before you answer that, we have to go back to make sure what type of game it is, because as Martin would tell you, when Anthony's got a cup game,
120.
we're getting 120. So
extra time every time.
On the fall, minutes. Put that out there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Check the stats. Your island stats. Check the stats. All Anthony's.
Check the stats. Earl, I appreciate that question, because as senior officials, and we all do it, we literally put a lot of trust in our assistants, and we're confident, simply because we're instructors, actually, that we've trained them well. And we actually do expect them to make the calls that they have to make. We'll take responsibility for it, because that's what we do. But our young officials our officials are actually well-trained. They are well-trained, and they have taken on board the information. And so we put the trust in them. I tell them in my pre-match brief, if you see it and you're 100% sure, make the call, I'm going with you. If I look at you and you look at me, then I'll make the decision. If you're unsure, just give me a hard look. I'll make the decision and you go with me. So nobody actually knows, unless you are an official, what's going on. But our officials are very good and confident enough to make the call. If we have to have a discussion, we'll have a discussion. I'll take responsibility. And Earl, you've seen enough games to know that I will take responsibility for any call, because that's what my job is. Even if my official is wrong, and I have the ability to take that responsibility, I'll take the responsibility, because we're very proud of our officials. I grew up with Lyndon, and Lyndon knows that I learned my 120 minutes from him. So we're good, So it's what the button has been passed, and I'll never forget where Lyndon gave me the ability to make a call. He looked at me, and I had to make the call, because, as always, he was trailing a little because it was a good fast break, so he was a little distant. So I had to make the call, and the amount of trust that he put in me, he didn't even come over and ask. He simply went, "That's the call we're making." We made the call, and we went away. And that's how we've trained our officials to be that confident. Make the call. We'll back you up, unless, of course, it's completely wrong and we have to adjust. But we adjust quickly. And very few people know how many times we do that in any game.
Mr. Marino, when you started out officiating, there was always that struggle of having a complement of officials for the entire weekend. Back then, we had night games through the week. We had, there was probably not as many full slated matches over the weekend, because we used to use Devonshire Act, BAA, Somerset, PHC. So were you ever concerned about having a lack of officials when you were officiating yesterday? I don't want to say years going by, but I just...
In the early years of my refereeing, that was not really the problem, because when I came to referee, it was almost like 40 referees. Mm-hmm. So, sometimes you may not even get a game during the weekend because we didn't have 40 matches. But as time went on, different things happened. Towards the later part of my refereeing career, it did become a concern of, am I going to get 3 officials at a match? And a lot of it is because, one, we lost a lot of referees in a clump. And then there was no one coming through to backfill them. Mm-hmm. And we were, and I still think we're playing a lot of too much football. When you look at the pressure put on the chairman to have referees at under 7s, under 15s, the PDL, the First Division and Premier Division, and all of that's taking place somewhere between Thursday evening all the way through Sunday. That's a lot of games. I mean, you got a small pool of referees. You have to worry about injuries. You have to worry about availability because of work-wise. And as you know, Earl, before, as a player, you knew, you can have your full squad every weekend. But as time and life has developed, guys will tell you, I'm not getting paid for this. I got to go work.
Yeah.
So just as teams are struggling to put out a full complement of a team, so is the referee association, because we just don't have the numbers. Yeah. And so I'm going to say this with who's listening, that sometimes when you see that referee or that AR running on the line, chances are he's already done a match earlier.
Yep.
And he's probably done 2 matches the night before.
Yep.
And so we, in some ways, are doing a disservice to our referees, because we're demanding so much of them, but not being able to give them the recovery time to step down from the game, because when you do a match, Anthony and Martin will tell you, it doesn't, for a referee, it doesn't finish when you walk off the field. You are constantly reassessing yourself from the time you leave the field to the time you get home. Did I make the right call? And in fact, I have a checklist that I've given to the referees that, when you go home, you should be honest with yourself. Do your own assessment. Did I make the right call? Did I do this properly? Do I do that properly? And after you get your shower, that's when you turn the game off. But that could be 2 or 3 hours later.
Yeah.
Well, everybody knows the referee always gets the call wrong, right?
Of course.
You're never 100%, because only 50% of the people like the call that you make, because it's going their way.
Well, there's
and you can't even please all of them either.
Well, do you remember McNeil Smith?
Yes.
He said to me when I first started, he says, right, the last words he used to say, leaving the changing room, he says, let's go give them hell. Right? And when we came off the field, he used to say, well, we pissed off both teams and the fans. We've had a good day.
We had a good day. We had a good day.
So Martin, you did indicate what you anticipated seeing when you first came to Bermuda. You've had some time now to see how it's all developed. But I want to talk a bit about the growth of what you've seen from official side. That in itself has grown tremendously, hasn't it?
It has, and maybe it's because I'm getting old, but the officials are getting younger. It's like when you see a policeman, I must be getting old because all the policemen look a lot younger than they used to. The officials, apart from Lyndon, obviously, and Garrick. The change in me has been the efforts made to recruit. We struggle for numbers. Lyndon said that. That's no secret. When me, Anthony, Garrick, the senior guys have got to turn out 2 or 3 times a week in some cases to do games, when we'd like to be assessing and coaching and mentoring. That's what we should be doing now. But there has been when I started refereeing only here 10 years ago, whatever it was, it seemed to me it was all the old guys were doing it. And now we've got more females. We've got younger ones coming through, involved. That's been the real change to me. So the credit must go to the chair, Mr. Williams, and my colleagues for bringing people on and actually keeping the key is retention. That's the key. There's some ridiculous stat, certainly in English football, there's some ridiculous stat like 70% of people who pass the exam, start officiating, quit after 1 or 2 games. And that's ridiculous. Thankfully, we don't have that here, because I like to think we have a good support system in place for these officials. But certainly the difference I've seen since officiating in Bermuda is we have the younger ones coming through and keen and committed younger officials that turn up every week and come to training, which is really, really good to see. So it bodes very well for the future. Yeah.
Lyndon, when you started officiating, you had just started, or you were actually still playing at the time. But how difficult was that transition for you from especially being a goal stopper, or were you a goalkeeper?
I was a goalkeeper.
Okay. It's a little different, See, Mr. Francis was a stopper too. See,
I was a stopper.
But that transition from player mode to officiating mode, it's a because I often ask the youngsters how do they do it. It'll be interesting to find out back then, how did you do it?
It came about because I got injured. I had, in the space of about 18 months, I had 2 knee surgeries. And after the second one, I'm like, I can't go through this. But something that my father always said to me is that in order for the game to continue, you have to get something back. And so the options were coach, administrator, or referee. And I remember one of my last few games refereeing, the referee called a handball against me, and I was playing outfield this day, and I cursed him off like, you don't know what handball is. And he said to me, well, come to the course. And I went to the course, and I liked it. It was like, hey, so there was a handball that I did the other day, and it just grew from there. And then it helped that I had um, around me, I had Ray Grimes, who is largely responsible for me
Us.
getting the FIFA list.
Yep.
And then I had the good fortune of working with Rex Osborne, a couple of other police officers that were referees, and they started talking to me. And particularly Rex, he's the one that says, football, you may never get no further than where you are in football as a player, but you have a better chance of becoming an international referee
Yes.
by taking the route by doing refereeing. And as you know, I became an assistant referee first, FIFA referee first, and then transitioned to be a FIFA referee and now a FIFA trained instructor. So the transition for me was very easy because I felt I had to get something back to the game.
Yes.
And so that is how I was able to make the transition. I knew I just did not want to sit on the sidelines and criticize the referees for making mistakes. I was challenged to say, come make a difference. And that's where I ended up being referee.
Mm-hmm. No, Mr. Francis, we know everyone is challenged differently, especially when it comes to the physical part. You can
Yes.
be the skinniest person, but be not very good at doing physical work.
Yeah.
How do you, when you set up for the physical side of a training,
Mm-hmm.
do you adjust it to different people's tempo to ensure that they get the maximum out of it that, someone else who's a little better at it will get as well?
As a fitness trainer, yes, I have to. It doesn't change the drill. It doesn't change the objective. But what we do is we adjust the level at which they're supposed to work. We have a set of officials that we're looking at that have to meet a certain standard. So they get pushed a whole lot harder than some of the other officials that are not looking to make that standard. Because, of course, we're training, because we do 120 minutes on a regular basis, we train them to go for 120 minutes. And that's not just physically, that's physically and mentally. We try and make them tired. We try and get them breathing heavy. And then we try and make them concentrate and think under that type of pressure. Because we have had the benefit of having a FIFA assistant referee on the FIFA list, now it gets a little bit harder because we have to keep him sharp because we never know when he's going to get cold. But there are those that are following him that we have to push them just as hard because our expectation is that in the next 3 years, we're going to have a full team on the FIFA list. So we're planning for that now. Martin says it best. We have a lot of young officials that we're hoping to just simply retain. They're growing up and still playing football. They're going off to school. But we want to see them come back or not even come back. We want to see them progress wherever they are. But we want to be able to say that we helped shape them and gave them some ability. So yeah, physically we push them hard. Our referees, because most people don't think about it, referees go harder and longer than any player on the field. Assistant referees go up and down just as hard as the players on the field. I know, Lyndon Martin and I make it look easy, but it isn't. It just isn't. We go hard, but because we have to think, we have to assess, we have to judge all of the things that the players don't have to do. We have to keep going when they get to stop and rest. So our training is a little different. It is a little harder, but it is to the physical aspects of the individual referee so that we can get the best out of them.
Yeah. Mr. Wire, the technical part of the laws of the game, when it comes down to administering them to the referees and the referee assistants, how much of it how long does it take for you to fully comprehend a new law, understand it yourself, so then you're able to deliver it in the manner in which the booklet wants you to.
We're just like any other teachers, really. Well, obviously not professional teachers, but you know, when the IFAB does the law amendments at the beginning of every season, the first thing that is the instructors have to read them, we have to understand them, and then we'll get together as an instructor group to make sure we're teaching the same thing. Because you take the handball law, which actually hasn't really changed. People says it has, but it hasn't really. They just changed some of the words, but the actual intent isn't there. But you can interpret it different ways. Lyndon said it earlier. I might think it goes this way, and then you'll say, no, it's meant that way. And Anthony will say, no, it was that way. So we have to understand it. Then we have to get our heads together to make sure we're teaching the same thing, because consistency is key. Nothing worse than confusing an official. Once we understand it and get it together, then we can break it down and explain it. And we have presentations at the beginning of the year, beginning of the season to all the officials, whatever level, about the law changes. But it's key that we understand it first, and then put it into realistic game situations rather than just words. Because I said it earlier, I could give you the laws of the game, laws 1 to 17. You can go and read it like you would read any book, sit in an exam and pass it. But it's how it's interpreted in the game. When you look at law 12, fouls of misconduct, which is the bread and butter of what we do, it's subjective. We say this constantly. It's a subjective law, because what I think is a foul challenge, you may not, and Anthony may not. What I think is a yellow card and reckless, you may not. So that's the nuances we have to get across when we teach in technical as well. When we do the physical stuff, we have a checklist we go through with all the officials. We try and get them in their brain in 5 seconds to go through a tick box list.
Yeah.
And that helps them come to the right decision. So it's not just learning the laws, it's implementing them and how you put them into a game of football with all the passion and emotion that comes with it. But the law changes, basically, the old fellas have to understand it first, is the thing. And if we can understand it, then anyone can.
Now, being that you brought up IFAB, they're actually reviewing, they have another panel reviewing that handball rule just to confuse things even more.
But the law hasn't changed. The first part of Law 12 for the handball bit says it has to be a deliberate action. That's never changed.
Yeah.
It's just now, how does it come off a player, and is it above the shoulders? What they've tried to do is drill down and clarify it to make it easier for players, spectators, and officials to understand, and coaches. I think what they've actually done is confused it somewhat, but it isn't difficult.
Yeah. I could ask you, Mr. Arena, what's the plan for the aspiring FIFA officials?
I think to put it in a nutshell, to make them fully equipped as a well-rounded official. As Martin said, you got to know the law, but it's your personality, it's your application of the law, and then the fitness component. That's it in a nutshell. But it's going to require some work. It's going to require work by all parties. It's going to require work from the instructors, and it's going to require a lot of work by the individual referee. Because at the end of the day, as it was taught to me, and as I try to impart to the referees, you got to want to be the referee or the AR.
Yeah.
I can bring you into the circle, but if you are not willing to put in the sacrifice, the hard work to get to that level, then for me, let me know early, then we can decide what we're going to do. And I'll give you an example. Tashan has probably made the quickest transition, probably in Bermuda history, of going from a person who just came into the picture to becoming a FIFA AR. And the story I tell is that Grimes and I, Cranston said, listen, I have my godson, he wants to be a referee, interested in referee. And he came, he said, okay, we'll meet him at the DOBFA office. We sat there for maybe a half a day, went through some videos and whatnot, gave him a test. And me and Grimes were shocked because he actually scored, I think, 18 out of 20 on this video test. And we worked with him for a bit, and then, me and Grimes talk more and say, you know what, this guy has a lot of potential to be AR. And so we put it to him, and it's probably to my regret after that. He worked because I'm sure, Earl, you would have seen me up at BFA Field many nights when it was just me and Tashawn up when he was training. That's the work ethic that you got to put in as a referee if you want to reach the top. Just as a player, professional player, puts in that extra time on the field, so does the referee. Marvin will attest to you that a lot of times we tell them, read the law. You should be reading the law and challenge us, the instructors, on what you read in the law, in opposed to just sitting in a classroom and having it, shoved down your throat, per se. With Anthony, they shouldn't have to be waiting around. For me, they shouldn't have to wait until Anthony gets there to set up the cones and whatnot. If they're really hungry, they will be getting themselves ready from jump start. They will be doing the training on the side or away from our own training session. They should be going out running every day by themselves, right? So those are the things that as a referee, that if you want to get to the top, you got to put in the work.
Yep.
No, let me ask you guys this, because, and I've brought this up on several occasions. When you have aspirations of going to become a FIFA AR, FIFA referee, there's that language barrier, because we, over in this side, in our region, we have a lot of Spanish-speaking countries and so forth, that they use different languages in order to get away with saying something derogatory to and about officials. How important is it that we kind of implement some basic languages to the especially to the aspiring ones, to assist them, that if they get a call up, they are even more comfortable going to one of these Spanish-speaking countries, and they are comfortable in officiating there?
Well, firstly, actually it's written down, English is the universal language for football.
Yeah.
So actually, there's an expectation as you move up the levels, and the guys will, I'm sure, hopefully agree with this. As you move up the levels, English is. So it's incumbent on players and coaches to have a rudimentary knowledge of English. I don't wish that to sound elitist or anything, but English is the language. When we go on the CONCACAF training courses, they do sometimes split down instructor classes into the native Spanish speaking and the native English speaking, but even they're becoming more and more integrated now. People are expected to have a certain understanding. I hear what you're saying. I use the example of when I've refereed in Holland and in Germany. And lucky in Holland, the vast majority of Dutch people have a very good English understanding. But in Germany, they don't. They will speak their language, but they are told that no, the referee, rector, is an Englishman. Unique, and English is the universal language. All players know a wag of the finger and no. They know exactly what those gestures mean. So I hear you, maybe people might want to understand the basics, but when a player is being aggressive towards you or another player, no matter what language they're using.
Actually, Earl, when I traveled to Canada to take part in under 18 qualifiers, part of our briefing was because we had Spanish teams from down south. They actually told us some of the words to look for, which means that they're talking bad about you. So, as Mark is correct, English is the official language for football. The three languages are French, English, Spanish, and what's the fourth one? German, I think, or Dutch. But generally, every session, everything is got to be in English. And in actual fact, for a FIFA referee, one of the requirements of getting to be now is that he has to learn how to speak English. So you deal with Spanish referees, they have got to be able to speak English. So it's actually the reverse to your question.
That's good to know then.
Yeah, so, but even traveling, you will get to find out, what are the bad words in that language that I need to listen out for, right? Because when you hear it on the field, you need to deal with it.
Right. I think that was the point I was trying to get to, because what you want to do is make sure that you are aware of what certain things mean in the contacts. So in the event that you hear it, you could address it. And 9 times out of 10, if they know, hey, he only speaks English, I'm going to use, we could talk in our language and we'll get away with far more than if we had a referee that could speak both languages. So
Yes.
that was the point I was trying to get to. But gentlemen, I do want to thank you very much for your time. Listen, Mr. Wire, Mr. Francis, I want to thank you both because you were able to get Mr. Rayner, who I've been trying to get an interview with, to talk about officiating. I think this is the 3rd year, and he's always turned me down. But I think because you guys came on, he was a little bit reluctant, but he came anyway. So thank you, Mr. Rayner, as well.
Lyndon is a naturally shy person, as we all know. Bless him.
Yes.
Give him a whistle.
Yeah. Then he's not.
Give him a whistle, and he turns into somebody else.
It's true.
Again, I want to thank you guys very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you, Earl.
Thank you, Earl. Appreciate it.
Have a great one. See you guys later.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot.